I was booted out of the house and shouted at by my merciless parents when I was 8 years old. I felt out of place because they were constantly looking out for my younger brother. A sweet woman came up to me and took me in as I walked the dark streets, terrified and all alone. Now let's jump ahead 15 years. I was prepared to react differently and alter everything when my parents returned to my life after I had become a successful woman. I frequently felt like an outsider in my own house as a child of a rich family in Austin, Texas. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, my parents, were prominent solicitors who appeared to take great pleasure in their position and the acclaim it brought them. Because of his academic prowess and natural ability to win their admiration, my younger brother Max was their hero. On the other hand, I felt abandoned and mistreated all the time since I couldn't live up to their high standards. I could never win their approval no matter how much I tried. Thanks to my Aunt Nancy, my trip took a significant turn. I didn't realize it at the time. Everything reached a boiling point when I was 8 years old. My name is Lily. I was anxiously contemplating my most recent test scores as I hurriedly made my way home from school. No matter how much I tried, I just couldn't obtain the mark my parents were hoping for. I overheard them raising their voices in the living room that night. "She's disappointing," my mom yelled. "We've given her every opportunity, and what do we get in return?" Tears were running down my face as I stood motionless outside my bedroom door. "Why can't you understand I'm trying?" The urge to yell was overwhelming, but I couldn't get the words out. Following supper that night, they approached me. "Listen, Lily, this is not going to work." Coldly, my father warned me that unless I started acting my age, I would have to find a new place to live. His expression was so serious, I believed he was kidding. "You're not living up to your potential." "Where will I go?" Fear gripped me as I murmured. "Disentangle it," was his response. The final straw was that. Knowing I had nowhere to go, I packed a tiny bag and left the house with my pulse hammering. I felt disoriented and scared as I roamed the streets of Austin. The cacophony of human voices and the dazzling lights of the metropolis were too much to bear. Even though I was supposed to feel at home here, I felt completely alone and like an outsider. Tension built up as the hours slipped away. I spotted a familiar face right when I thought everything was hopeless. My Aunt Nancy was standing before me. "Lily, I'm worried about you." "Why are you here?" she inquired. I was lost and didn't know who to ask. I said, my voice visibly shaking. She embraced me without thinking twice. "Come with me," she whispered softly. "You're safe now." The generous restaurant manager, Nancy, was in her 40s. She was the one person who had faith in me and had always been there for me. Accompanying her to her little flat, I experienced a glimmer of hope rekindle inside me. After we got comfortable in, she cooked me a bowl of hot soup. "I was really concerned about you," she said, her voice reassuring. "You can stay with me for as long as you need." Nancy had a profound impact on my life. The emotional gap that my parents had left behind was filled by her. "Good job, Lily. She gave you the message that anything is possible if you put your mind to it." My academic performance improved after she encouraged me. I was determined to show everyone that I could succeed, so I studied more than ever before. Meanwhile, our parents' expectations were too much for Max to bear. It was obvious to me how much it affected him. As the sun set, I discovered him in our former neighborhood, strumming a guitar on the front steps of our childhood home. "Hey, are you okay?" Perched on the edge of his chair, I inquired. "Just thinking," he responded, maintaining a strained brow. "I want to be a musician, but my parents want me to follow in their footsteps. Their complete lack of interest in my desires is disheartening." "I understand," I murmured, my voice tinged with the anguish of our common battle. "You have to follow your passion, Max." "But they'll be so mad," he moaned as he looked down at his instrument. "Perhaps it's time to assert yourself," I suggested, drawing on my personal experience. "You deserve to be happy." I thrived in Nancy's care as the weeks went by, but Max's distance from our parents widened. What followed the revelation that he had enrolled in a school for the performing arts was an explosion I will never forget. After a long day at school, I came home one evening to discover my parents arguing with Max. "You're throwing your life away," Mr. Hayes shouted, his face red with anger. "No, Dad, I'm doing what I love," Max defended himself, his voice rising. "That's not how we raised you. You're wasting your potential," Mrs. Hayes added, her tone harsh. I stepped into the living room, my heart racing. "This isn't fair. He has the right to choose his own path," I shouted, feeling a rush of adrenaline. "Stay out of this, Lily," my father barked. "You've done enough damage already." That moment solidified the growing distance between us. I watched as Max stood his ground, but it was clear our parents' control over our lives was suffocating. The confrontation marked a turning point, not just for Max, but for me as well. As I settled into life with Nancy, I felt a new sense of hope. She became my rock, always encouraging me and reminding me of my worth. Her small apartment was filled with warmth, laughter, and the smell of home-cooked meals. It was a stark contrast to the cold, demanding environment I had left behind. "Lily, you're going to be a doctor one day. I just know it," Nancy would often say while helping me with my studies. "You have the heart for it." Her belief in me sparked a fire within. I threw myself into my studies, determined to excel. School became my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the haunting memories of my childhood. I worked tirelessly, aiming for high grades, fueled by the desire to prove my worth, not just to myself, but also to my parents. As I flourished academically, I often thought about Max. He was still living under our parents' roof, and I worried about him. One day, I decided to call him. "Hey, how's everything?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. "It's the same, you know. Mom and Dad just don't get it," he replied, his voice heavy with frustration. "They think I'm going to change my mind and go to law school like them." "You won't, though," I said firmly. "You're too talented for that. You need to follow your passion." "I know, but it's hard when they keep pushing," Max admitted. "I wish I could just escape like you did." "Maybe you can," I suggested, feeling a rush of inspiration. "You could come stay with me and Nancy for a while. It might help you figure things out." "Yeah, maybe," he said, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. As months passed, my dedication to becoming a doctor paid off. I graduated high school with honors and received a scholarship to a prestigious university. The moment I received my acceptance letter, I jumped up and down with excitement, clutching it tightly. "I did it, Nancy. I'm going to be a doctor." Nancy hugged me tightly, tears of joy in her eyes. "I always knew you could do it, Lily. You deserve this." But the joy was tinged with fear. I knew my parents would likely react negatively to my achievements, just as they always had. Sure enough, when I called to share the news, their response was lackluster. "That's great, Lily," my father said, though his tone was flat. "But remember, medical school is tough. You have to be perfect." "Why can't you just be proud of her?" Nancy interjected, frustration bubbling over. "She's worked so hard for this." Their silence was deafening. They were still stuck in their old ways, unable to see my accomplishments as anything more than obligations to fulfill. It stung, but I refused to let their disappointment overshadow my joy as I began my studies. I threw myself into my coursework. Medical school was rigorous, but I loved it. The knowledge I gained fueled my passion, and I thrived on the challenges. Late nights spent studying were often accompanied by texts from Max, who was trying to navigate his own path. "Just finished another song," he texted one night. "It's about breaking free from expectations." "Can't wait to hear it," I replied, feeling proud of him. I hoped he would find the courage to pursue his dreams. As I advanced in my studies, my parents attempted to reach out again, but their motives felt insincere. They sent an email suggesting I should consider law school instead, offering to help with tuition. "Lily, think about what a law degree could mean for your future," they wrote. I felt anger boil inside me. "I'm not interested in being a lawyer. I shouted at my computer screen. I'm going to be a doctor. Nancy found me in this state one afternoon. What's wrong? She asked, concern in her eyes. They think I should drop everything and follow their path. I replied, frustration spilling over. It's like they can't accept who I really am. Lily, you are strong, Nancy said gently. You've come so far. Don't let their expectations pull you back down. Her words reminded me of my purpose. I was determined to break free from the chains of my past and pursue my passion for helping children. As I dove deeper into my studies, I found a sense of belonging and fulfillment that I had never experienced before. But the shadows of my childhood were always there, lurking just beneath the surface. I had escaped physically, but emotionally, the scars ran deep. I couldn't shake the feeling that my parents would never truly accept me. Despite this, I pushed forward, driven by the love and support from Nancy and my desire to create a better future for myself. Little did I know that the real test was yet to come, and the struggle for acceptance would become more complicated than I could ever imagine. As I continued my journey through medical school, I felt like I was finally becoming the person I was meant to be. I had a purpose, and my passion for helping children fueled my determination. I was surrounded by friends who shared my dreams, and for the first time, I felt a sense of belonging. But as I thrived in this new world, my parents' presence loomed over me like a dark cloud. I received occasional emails, reminders of their expectations and suggestions that I consider a career in law. I would read their words and feel the old anger rise within me, but I had learned to compartmentalize those feelings. One evening, as I studied for an upcoming exam, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Max. Can we talk? I need to figure things out. I felt a wave of concern wash over me. Of course, come over, I replied, eager to support him. When he arrived, he looked more stressed than ever. I can't take it anymore, Lily. Mom and Dad are relentless, he confessed, running a hand through his hair. They think I'm just wasting my life away with music. You know that's not true, I said, trying to reassure him. You have talent and you deserve to follow your passion. I know, but every time I try to talk to them, it's like I'm speaking to a wall, he said, frustration evident in his voice. They just don't get it. As we talked, I could see the struggle written on his face. I felt a deep sense of empathy for him. I had faced the same battles, and I knew how suffocating it felt. Maybe it's time to stand up to them, I suggested. You deserve to be happy. Max nodded slowly, but I could tell he was still hesitant. I don't want to lose them completely. Sometimes you have to take a stand for yourself, I replied. I had to do the same. It's hard, but you'll be better for it. Days turned into weeks, and as I immersed myself in my studies, the looming confrontation with my parents hung in the air. I knew that eventually I would have to face them. Then one evening, I received a phone call from my parents. We'd like to have a family dinner, my mother said. It's important. A knot formed in my stomach. Sure, I replied cautiously, unsure of what to expect. The dinner was set for a few days later. As the date approached, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. I wanted to believe they were ready to reconcile, but a part of me braced for another round of disappointment. When the day arrived, I arrived at the restaurant early. I could feel my heart racing as I waited for them to arrive. When they walked in, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes looked just as imposing as ever. They took their seats, and I could sense the tension in the air. Thank you for coming, my mother began, her voice cool. We wanted to talk about our family and our future. Okay, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. I've been doing some thinking, Mr. Hayes said, leaning forward. About your education and your future. We believe it's time for you to consider law school. My heart sank. I've told you before, Dad. I want to be a doctor. That's my passion, I replied firmly. Passion doesn't pay the bills, he snapped, frustration seeping into his tone. You need to think practically. Practicality isn't everything, I shot back, feeling the anger bubble up inside me. I've worked so hard to get where I am, and I won't let you push me into a career I don't want. The tension in the restaurant thickened as patrons turned their heads, drawn to our heated exchange. Lily, we only want what's best for you, my mother said, her voice trembling slightly. But you're not making smart choices. No, you're not listening. You've never listened, I yelled, unable to contain my emotions. You've spent my entire life dictating my worth based on grades and achievements. I'm done. Suddenly, Max entered the restaurant, sensing the commotion. He spotted me and rushed over. What's going on? He asked, his eyes wide with concern. Just a family discussion, Mr. Hayes said dismissively, but it was clear the situation had escalated. Family? This doesn't look like family, Max replied, glaring at our parents. You can't keep doing this to her, to us. What do you know about family? Mrs. Hayes shot back, her voice harsh. More than you think, Max shouted, stepping closer to me. Lily deserves support, not judgment. We both do. In that moment, the dam broke. The emotions I'd kept bottled up for years flooded out. I realized I had spent far too long trying to earn their love and approval, only to find that their expectations would never be enough. Enough, I shouted, my voice trembling. I'm done trying to live up to your standards. I'm finally happy, and I refuse to let you take that away from me. The restaurant was silent, and I could feel all eyes on us. It was a moment of raw vulnerability. The weight of my childhood, the pain, the rejection, the struggle, was laid bare for everyone to see. As I looked around, I knew I was ready to break free from the past. I was finally reclaiming my life. But I could sense that this confrontation was only the beginning of a much bigger battle. The silence in the restaurant was palpable. My heart raced as I faced my parents, the truth of my feelings laid bare. Max stood beside me, his presence a comforting anchor. I could see the shock on my parents' faces, but I wasn't backing down. Lily, this isn't how you should talk to us, my father finally said, his voice trembling slightly. Why not? I shot back, my anger still simmering. I've spent my entire life trying to please you, and it has only made me feel worse. I'm not a disappointment. I'm doing what I love. Max turned to them, his eyes fierce. You need to understand that pushing us into careers we don't want isn't love, it's control. My mother looked taken aback, her facade of authority crumbling. We thought we were doing what was best for you, she said quietly, the hurt evident in her voice. Best for us or best for you? I countered, feeling the weight of my words. You've never seen us for who we really are. You only see your expectations. At that moment, I felt a shift within myself. I was no longer that scared little girl trying to earn her parents' love. I was an adult, a doctor with dreams of helping others. And I was finally ready to stand up for myself and Max. Enough of this, I said firmly. I won't let you dictate my future anymore. I am pursuing my dream of becoming a pediatrician, and nothing you say will change that. Tears welled in my mother's eyes as she seemed to realize the depth of her actions. I just wanted you both to have secure futures, she said softly. I thought that would make you happy. Happiness isn't defined by a job or a title, Max whispered affectionately. Being authentic is the key. My goal is to compose music, while Lily's is to work with kids. That's the key to our happiness. There was complete stillness in the eatery, but I could feel my stress go away. My breathing became unrestricted for the very first time. It felt freeing to have stated my truth. Perhaps we've been overly preoccupied with our personal standards of achievement, Mr. Hayes confessed, his voice burdened with disappointment. We didn't mean to push you away. Words would mend the hurts, even though I could see the honesty in their eyes. With a firm voice, I acknowledged that it would require time. But I'm willing to try if you are. After a long exhalation, my mom gave the signal. You have our full backing, Lily. Yes, it's true. Why don't we start over? Max and I looked at each other. Let's move step by step, I said with caution. We have a lot to work through. My burden lifted as we departed from the eatery. A door had been opened, not just for healing, but also for understanding, by the encounter. At last, my folks were starting to get it. Love had no conditions. Our relationship started to heal in the weeks that came after. My parents tried their best to be supportive, but it was still not easy because old habits died hard. They showed up to my medical school functions, and I finally felt like someone was making an honest effort to comprehend my enthusiasm. At the same time, Max persisted in pursuing music. As he gradually carved out his own niche, he performed at local venues. His bravery in standing up for his beliefs was inspiring, and I was proud of him. We, Max, Nancy, and myself, came to the conclusion that we should launch a children's center together. Like us, they fought for our passions, and now they wanted to provide a place where youngsters could do the same. Feeling completely fulfilled, I stood at the center's entrance, surrounded by happy faces. From being a shy child who desperately sought acceptance to a strong lady who battled for her loved ones, I had gone a long way. What I've learned on my path is that love isn't about pleasing other people. Being genuine with one another is the most important thing. It was a lesson that should have been shared.